Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Real Recovery. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. It is time for Real Recovery. So glad you joined us tonight. Bill Arnold on this side of the studio, and just across the way, George P. Fraser. Hello, George.
Kind of a recovery hullabaloo is the
I didn't
way
know what
said.
that means, but thank you.
That was the surfing show.
Oh,
in the
yeah. I'm
60s.
connecting those dots now.
So anyway.
We're not off track yet, are we?
No.
Okay,
Gosh,
good.
no.
All right.
That music just charges me up.
Energizes.
Yeah.
Energizes you. I can tell that. Now, George, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of things. First thing on my agenda is I was reading 1 John chapter 3, verse 20, and it says, if our hearts condemn us, we know that God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything. So I think there's that message that says, if you're not being able to forgive yourself, stop it, get over it, because God is the one who does the forgiving.
And that ties into 1 John 1:9, I believe, Bill, where if we're faithful to confess our sins, he's faithful to forgive us. But the Holy Spirit, in the verse you talked about, does condemn us of things to change. And the other point of that is, if you're, I don't know what the address is, but blessed is the man who does not condemn that which he does. If you're using or drinking or gambling too much, and you don't feel right about it, the Holy Spirit is convicting you of that. He who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. And stop fighting it. Admit it. Confess it. And you will have peace. And that's hard to do, Bill. It really is. And we all have a couple things in our life when we're feeling really good about our walk, where the enemy, I believe that's in Ephesians, Bill, the fiery darts of the enemy. You get that thought, yeah, but you remember what you did when you were 12? And then all of a sudden you've lost the peace, that comes from only walking with God. Well, telling myself a little bit, one that I held on to for 35 years. I had, in 1977, my mom, who had cancer for 5 years, one day on Saturday, and I'm really not proud of this, wanted me to give her a ride to the hospital. And I had a racquetball game an hour later, and I said, can you get a ride with your sister? And she goes, yeah. And I go, well, thank you. And I left. My mom never got out of the hospital, and she died. So I got, sober, continued after that. Bible studies, church. I knew God forgave me, but man, I couldn't forgive myself. And there's nowhere in the Bible where it says I'm supposed to forgive myself. That's Jesus's job. That's idolatry. But I'm supposed to accept that forgiveness. So in 2012, 35 years later, I'm working at the Salvation Army. And I had to kick a guy out for drinking, help him load the 2 garbage bags he has of personal belongings into the car. He's my age. Mom picks him up. They drive away. She stops. I'm standing on at the sidewalk going, how sad. She gets out of the car. She walks up to me and she goes, George, I was a good friend of your mom's, and I just want to tell you how proud she'd be of your life.
Wow.
35 years later, George walks into the chapel afterwards, cries for about 5 minutes, but we had work to do. So I'm not asking you to do anything I haven't done. We all have that. And I believe in Revelation it talks about the accuser standing before the throne of God accusing the brethren. And I believe that's one of those moments where you get that. You go, well, you can't be a Christian because you did this. That's not from God. And I have to go, God, please help me with this. I know you forgive me. Please give me the strength to accept that and move on from this.
Oh, appreciate that, George. It's a great story. I know it's hard for you to tell that story.
But that make me look really good, one of the many.
Well,
but
that's
it's
why
true.
It's probably
and
hard.
God used that to really help me. And so if you're struggling with something, and all the guys I work with, Bill, when we get to step 5 where we admit to God, ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, when they get done, I tell them I'm going to go to the restroom for a minute, and when I come back, I want you to tell me the 3 things you weren't going to tell me. And almost every guy goes, how did you know that? Well, that was used on me, and it's true.
Mm-hmm. George, I would venture to say everybody that steps into recovery realizes that unless they come to grips with step 1 in the recovery book, that nothing is going to happen.
That is correct.
Unless they say, I am powerless over drugs and alcohol. And we can also throw that is powerless over sin in our lives that become unmanageable.
Well, people miss this step because it says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives were unmanageable. And you go, well, that's why I can't manage my life. No, the reason is because you're running your life. You're God in your own life. What are you powerful over? Nothing. Your next breath comes at the mercy of an all-sovereign God. Everything that happens, He allows. Our job isn't to try to figure out why He allows stuff. It is to be obedient and trust, obedient and obey. Pick up your cross, deny yourself, and pray for the power to carry that out. And that's how you walk it out.
Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to take an honest look at your life and tell the truth. Right?
That was a TV show.
It was?
Bill Cullen or something? Yeah.
Tell the truth?
Tell the truth. And you're right.
I mean, you have to show up and say, I need to tell the truth on myself.
Yes. And usually what we do is we're going to try to fix this on our own.
Yeah.
Well, I'll do this instead. I'll only drink on the weekends. I'll drink wine. I think I'll move to Florida.
Yeah, there's a loophole, isn't there?
That works really
you're
well
always
for me.
looking for the loophole.
Well, we're looking for that we can change it. And what step one says is no. There's no one righteous, not one.
That's the honesty step, isn't it?
Yes.
And if you can't confront that, you're going nowhere.
Usually, by the time you get there, you have been beaten into a state of reasonableness or maybe sanity for the first time that you are helpless. And when we talk about surrender, I think about the old World War II movies where you have your hands above your head, you put your weapons down. That's what you need to do with God.
Mm-hmm. What about just the arrogance that comes across people saying to you, I'm powerless? Come on. My life's going okay. I just have a little bit of a drinking problem. My life's fine.
You're talking to a 20-year-old George.
All right, what does the 20-year-old George
I would
back
have
with?
found you annoying then, and I still do today.
Well,
that's consistency.
Feelings are mutual.
No, and that's the gift. You're speaking truth.
Yeah.
I can't handle the truth.
That's
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the honesty here, and that is one of the things that I think everybody struggles with coming to step one in recovery. Can you just admit you are powerless and your life has become unmanageable? And if that's your story tonight, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned because we're going to hear a remarkable story of transformation.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I know I did it, I needed some more pain and misery.
No, you didn't. You wanted more pleasure and escape.
Yeah, and it was more pain and misery.
I know. And
then finally, when you're there and you go, okay, I did what I wanted to do and that didn't work. It's not that I have a drinking problem. I am a problem. And when you get to that is when you get to the good stuff. And a lot of people don't get to that, Bill, till they're sober a couple of years, thinking their big problem is they're drinking and drugging. And they realize, no, I'm selfish, self-centered, egocentric.
Mm-hmm. So the user has to admit defeat, and they don't like that. And everyone else who loves that user celebrates that moment.
Yes, but they have a wait and see. Don't tell me,
show
me.
I get it. And that's part of the recovery process. But if you are new to real recovery, we're so glad you tuned in. You will hear tonight a story of incredible transformation where God reached down and pulled our guest Lorna really out of a pit and not only saved her, but gave her purpose and hope and freedom from despair and desperation. And if you feel like that's your story, you're not going to want to touch the dial because we're going to take a short break and then come back. You're listening to Real Recovery. Bill Arnold, George Fraser, Ryan is on the board taking care of all of our audio needs. And after a short break, we'll be back with our special in-studio guest. Welcome back to Real Recovery, Bill and George. George, we got a great show tonight. Looking forward to it.
I am too.
Yeah, and way to go on that opening. again, the George P. Fraser wisdom came through loud and clear.
Oh, it's God all the way.
I agree.
You know that.
I couldn't agree more.
You know,
We're
he
looking-
uses the broken vessels.
Yeah, that'd be
That was
us.
good, wasn't it? It's right off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, you never prepare, so everything's off the top of your head.
This is my life.
Your whole life has been
I
preparing.
live
for
in a
this.
camper out in the parking lot, and once a week they let me come in.
I didn't think you were ever going to admit to that. Thank you for being so vulnerable. All right, George, let's get underway with our guest, Lorna. She has agreed to come on and tell her story of what God's done in her life, and it's an amazing story. Lorna, we're so glad that you could join us today.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you for having me.
You're so welcome. We're so curious to find out all about young Lorna when you were just a little girl and what life was like.
Oh, little Lorna.
Yeah.
You know, I had my mom and dad and my sister, and I really loved my family, and we were close. I was a daddy's girl. My mom worked. She was the head of household. We were all close until about 8 years old. That's when we moved to Minneapolis from North Dakota. And I didn't understand it at the time, but there was a huge shift in our family, and there was a lot of fighting all of a sudden. And I remember, to chunk it all in one huge chunk right away, from 8 to 18 years old, my parents fought every day. They argued every single day from 4 p.m. when my mom got home to about 2 a.m. every single night for 10 years. So it went from comfort to this all of a sudden change. I didn't realize until I was an adult that my mom had an affair in North Dakota. And my dad was very heartbroken, but very emotionally abusive and violent. I wouldn't say violent, I'm sorry. No, he was very emotionally abusive. And so that's what I lived with every day. My mom she was the one that used to get abusive with him. I had to call 911 on their fighting because he was turning purple. She was on top of him, about to kill him. And I was 10 years old and ran to the neighbor's house. And he ended up going to jail. And I was so confused. I didn't understand. He got out the next day, but there was a lot of pain in my household.
Boy, it
A lot of pain.
sure sounds that way. That would be a very challenging environment in which to, you're a 10-year-old, 8-year-old girl coming home from school, and all of a sudden now from 4 till 2 a.m. there's arguing going on. That would be hard to manage.
Name calling.
And it doesn't seem like home is a safe place.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Emotionally, you were probably on pins and needles.
I was on pins and needles. I was confused because I loved my parents, and I just didn't understand. I started to hate my dad when I was a daddy's girl. I was with him all the time, but I started to hate him because of the things that he would say to my mom. Not knowing, not that it made it better, but I didn't understand where the fighting was coming from. I just thought that he turned into a monster.
Mm-hmm. Was there drinking going on between your parents?
There was no drinking going on. My dad he quit drinking when he met my mother in 1979. I was born in 81. So he had been sober for a couple of years before I was even born. There was no spirituality or God in our home. Okay.
So your dad obviously felt very angry about the affair and was retaliating nonstop.
Nonstop.
Yeah, and obviously that was not getting forgiven or processed or counseled or anything, right?
No,
that was just raw.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember in school when they saw the sudden shift. I went through K through 8 school. I started going there in 3rd grade. So in 7th grade, the staff saw a switch. They saw something happening in me. And I saw a counselor and started to speak with her about how I felt inside. And I told her, I don't feel like living anymore. I don't want to go home. And they locked me up in the hospital. And so then after that, I was afraid to talk about how I felt. as an adult, I realized, she did the best thing, but it really put something in my soul that I can't talk about the things that I feel inside. Something's going to happen to me. I'm going to get locked up. I'm not supposed to feel that way. I felt like I was in the wrong for that, which was processed differently. I know now that she did the best thing for me at that time.
George, does it sound like don't talk, don't trust, don't feel?
Yeah, it's really sad. And when I hear that somebody is not violent because they're verbally abusive, I think that's just because you can't see the marks, right? Mm-hmm. And to grow up in a situation like that, who do you trust? And you also are conflicted with the family of origin because you feel bad that you are angry or disappointed with them or whatever. And as a kid, you can't process that.
Well, you don't have the language to process it. What was it like did you ever have visitors, aunts, uncles, anybody from extended family that you would have opportunities to confide in?
They did come, my family from both sides, and my parents would argue in front of them.
Oh, wow. So they couldn't take the foot off the gas, could they?
No, not at all.
Okay.
There was a lot of bad memories, and my graduation from high school, my dad made a huge scene, and it's in. I've forgiven him now, but it's been in my heart that's what I remember. Just him yelling and calling me names and
at home,
at my graduation,
at the ceremony.
At the ceremony.
Oh boy,
at St. Basilica. I graduated from De La Salle High School.
Okay.
Good school, Islanders.
Oh, it was a great school. I loved De La Salle.
So had you started using it all in high school?
I started using when I was 12.
Okay, that's right.
When I was 12 years old.
Talked a little bit before.
Yeah, if you pay attention, George, you would have remembered I said that.
Well, I don't listen to you as well as I could.
That's true. I appreciate the vulnerability once.
It's the honesty. At least I recognized
Look at
you
the
walking
progress
in.
you and I are making after 14 years.
I recognized you walking in where somebody else didn't. So give me some points for that. So what did you use at 12?
I started smoking weed at 12 years old. I was hanging out with my sister and her older friends. She's 6 years older than me. She was like 18. And I was actually really disappointed when I found out she smoked weed. And then it didn't take long for me to follow suit. And it didn't take long. I would say in the next year I was drinking at least once a month and smoking weed every day. I mean, it was a fast. From the moment I first hit weed at 12 years old, by the time I was 13, it was an everyday thing.
What did you like about it?
It was an escape. I felt, there was like a rebellion inside of me that I thought, I can control this. I can do what I want. And I didn't have to feel all of the feelings or the confusion. The confusion that I felt. That was one of the things that was hard for me to deal with. I loved my family very much, and I was just confused about everything that was going on.
You didn't have any control at home, did you?
I had no control over anything.
But smoking weed gave you some control.
Over my feelings and emotions.
Exactly. So you can self-medicate, numb down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And this is something I have control over.
I called, when I turned 12 years old, I nicknamed it the year, how do I say it? What did I say? The year that I fell, or the fallen year, because I had lost my virginity, started smoking weed, started skipping school. Like, it was just a complete radical change.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, and George, maybe you would help me with this one, but you're 12 years old smoking weed every day. Where do you get money to buy weed? I don't know what weed costs, but where do you get money to do that? Are you using allowance? Do you have a little job here or there? Are you stealing? What's going on?
Well, for that age, I think I was just hanging around the people that had it.
Okay.
And I did have an allowance from what I remember. I don't remember how I paid for it.
Okay.
I don't even know if I did.
Okay.
That's hanging around people that have it is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what's interesting here, it makes so much sense looking back how this would happen. And for most people that I've worked with over the years, and in my case, the first time I really did get high, I knew I'd be doing it again. And I became addicted very quickly, like you did. All my other interests were secondary to using it, recovering from it, getting it. And it's just a circle of getting it, using it, recovering, getting, using it. And it's the priority one in your life.
It is.
But you're surviving. And in your story, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Real good coping. I've got new friends.
Yeah, a lot of new friends. I have always had this drive inside of me. I did want to do good in my life. I played sports all on my own. It's not like my parents were like, "Hey, do this." I played sports. I tried to get the best grades I could. I had maintained a B average in De La Salle, lettered in softball. I was a first girl wrestler there. I made history. I did have a job at 15, and I had a few jobs during high school. So I tried to always be the best I could be, but then there was this other side of me that just had this grip. And it was the first thing that I wanted to do was get high before I did anything else. I did feel like an outcast. When on the basketball team at De La Salle, I had pictures, the team members put up no smoking or smoking's bad for your health or don't do drugs because they had found out that I did. And so that was just a huge rejection for me. I do believe that I never found an identity at all. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have any confidence in myself. I could see the grades on paper. I could see the accomplishments that I had, but nothing was ever good enough to me. I don't know. It was just, I lacked no confidence. I didn't have any idea of what, success was. And it was really sad. It's really sad to think that through all the hardships that I did go through and the things that I did accomplish, that I couldn't even see that in my own self.
Do you think it's hard when you can't connect with your parents to connect with other people in your life too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's just destruction.
I mean, George and Lorna, how would you be forming your identity when at night you go home and listen to arguing for 8 hours?
Yeah.
What identity are you forming? What are you understanding about yourself? I mean, to me, the home has always been kind of that place of restoration and building up, because you go out into the world every day as a student and a kid, and if you don't have a sanctuary at night to go home to where you get love and acceptance and affirmation, I don't know how you would be forming your identity without that.
That's a good point. Everything you do, you're part of different subgroups, but you're not really connected with them other than the activity. That's pretty lonely.
Yeah.
The no smoking on the basketball and stuff, if you had played hockey, that never would have been an issue. So that's the deal. How were your grades?
My grades? They were, I was on the B honor roll.
Good for you. So here's some talent. And later in your story, we're going to see some resiliency, which is the characteristic we need to overcome things and with God's help get sober. But that's down the road.
Yep.
Yeah.
So after high school...
So my parents divorced in June of 99, the year that I graduated. And my dad went to North Dakota and my mom moved to South Dakota with someone else. So I was left in this house in Northeast Minneapolis, all on my own, 18, going to the U of M because I got accepted there, and not knowing, I was a 12-year-old inside of an 18-year-old body, not knowing anything, and they just left.
Wow.
So I turned that house into a party house. And it didn't take long for me to get kicked out of the U of M, less than 6 months. When I was 20, I had my first child. And by the time I was 23, I had been partying so hard that meth came into the picture.
All right, we're going to take a little break and come back, hear more of Lorna's story. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. Ryan's on the board tonight, as always. We'll be right back in just a minute. Welcome back to Real Recovery, Bill and George. Our guest today is Lorna. And Lorna, right before the break, was leading up to 18 in a party house, gets kicked out of college after 6 months, Then all of a sudden she's 20, and then she has a baby. And the next thing we know, she's moving into harder drugs. Okay, let's pick up the story there, Lorna.
Yeah, so I was about 23 years old when I had my first hit of meth. And that's when I realized that I could get addicted to something real fast. The first time I hit it, and the next day I wanted more, and it didn't stop. And my child, she had moved in with her grandma, and that's when I first felt devastation, loss, chaotic lifestyle, violence, danger, guns, the police coming into my household, holding guns to my head. It went bad fast. And I lost everything. I did go to treatment in 2005, and I was out in 3 months, had some sobriety time. The next 10 to 15 years, I struggled on and off with meth abuse. I did have 5 years clean. I would get to this point, and then everything fell. But I tried to do everything on my own strength, and I have this performance issue. That's where I would find my identity, and my worth was how well I could perform things. It wasn't how well I was just being me. It was how well I could be a mom, how well I could be a girlfriend, how I could get a household together. And I strived so hard for this that I wore myself out. And every single time I fell back into an addiction.
So, Lorna, you would feel this sense of defeat, and the only answer to the sense of defeat would be to use.
Yeah, escape.
Okay.
How were you able to string 5 years of sobriety together? What were you doing to maintain that?
I did go to NA for a few years, then just gripping at the skin of my teeth, trying to maintain a job. I went to school to be a vet tech. I accomplished that. Went to school to be a surgical tech. I accomplished that. Like I would do all these things, but I never finished it. And I think having some stability kept me sober, but I wasn't serene inside. It was still chaos. And
So it wasn't good enough?
No, wasn't good enough.
So you had gone, I believe, to a Catholic high school and school. Did you have a relationship with God from your early childhood or late childhood?
When we moved to Minneapolis, there was a church down the block. My parents were Native American, and they didn't want nothing to do with it. But that church was calling me, and I wanted to go there. And my mom did honor that, and we started to go on Sundays. It was a Catholic church. In 2 years, I was baptized, confirmed, did the Sunday school. I did all that on my own. That's what I wanted. I didn't understand what I was doing. It was just something that called me. And that's when I first had a relationship with Jesus. No, I wouldn't say relationship. It's when I first knew who he was.
Okay.
And then during the fights, my dad started to call it a cult, and they just quit going, and I just quit going.
Your dad did what?
Called it a cult.
Oh, called it a cult. Okay.
Yeah. And so then it just fell aside. And especially when I turned 12, it really fell to the side. I ended up at De La Salle because my mother did not want me to go to a public school. She thought that I wouldn't survive. So that's how I ended up at De La Salle. Whether it was Catholic or not, I don't know if it had anything to do with her decision. She just wanted me safe and thought that was the best thing. During those 4 years, I don't remember having any type of relationship at all with Jesus. I was in survival mode. We did pray. It was very religious, and I didn't feel a connection there. And then when I went to college later on in life, I did a Native American history class, and I found out, the history of what had happened. So then I had an identity crisis. I totally turned my back away from Jesus and God. I said, he doesn't exist. I was mad. I was mad that I was American and Native. I didn't know who I was, just the identity thing coming up again. And I remember throwing away Bibles that were around me. It was just a really bad time in my life. But I still always felt this guilt inside of me for not loving him during that time. So it was still there, that conviction was still there. And I think that went back from knowing him at 8 years old, which is very special to me. So special. That I pursued him on my own at 8, that he called me. Thank you. So it wasn't until my very last, I'm kind of jumping around.
That's okay, Lorna.
My last relapse from 2020 to, sorry, I just lost me.
We were talking about your last relapse. How many years ago was that?
So in 2020, it was June of 2020 to December of 2023, and those were the worst years of my life. That when I said I lost things before, I completely lost everything. I lost all of my family. My 3 kids, my grandchild, the house that I had in Andover, all of my animals. I lost all that. I ended up on the streets. I was living in storage units. I was pretty much close to suicide in the summer of 2023. I remember being so alone and living in this storage unit where they had found a woman who had been dismembered while I was there. And that I really felt like the ghosts or the hauntedness of the street I don't know, it was just really bad. But I did end up going to jail that summer, and that is when I hit my knees and I called to the Lord. I didn't call to the Creator. I didn't call to anybody. I called to the Lord, and I said, you know what? I need you so bad. And I had spent a couple weeks in jail that time. And after I finally hit my knees, no one was wanting to help me or bail me out, which I understood. But it's still, when you don't know when you're going to get out of jail, there's this panic inside of you. After I got on my knees and I called out to him, there was a peace. There was a peace that came about me. And it didn't matter how long I was going to stay in there. I knew for some reason that it was going to be okay. I did get out and I went right back to the streets. And then things got really worse from July of 23 to like December of 23. I now know that during those 6 months, I had to break everything. I had to be broken down to nothing so I could finally completely open my hands and let him do what he needs to do and save me. I couldn't have any more pride. I couldn't have any more, I can survive the streets one more night. I just had to be completely broken down. But he was faithful and he answered me.
That's where we have to get, usually. And when you ask for him to help you, he shows up, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So you said that you were in jail with some time to do, and you had peace.
I had peace.
And there's only, I've been in jail myself, there's only one way that would happen, and it's not because you got a new TV in your cell, you know? And it's interesting, a lot of the people that are on our show, when they're cuffed in the back of the car, they have real peace because the gig is up. And we talk about the Department of Corrections being such a great evangelical tool in this country.
Yes.
So
I believe that.
Yeah. Miraculous story.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lorna, now you feel like the peace of Christ has come into your life.
Yes.
Have you put your belief and trust in him at this point? It sounds like you have.
Yes.
Okay, so now there's that additional 3 months of going out, and things still got worse. So then the next step was what?
Calling Teen Challenge.
Okay, now we got...
I had heard of Teen Challenge. My oldest daughter, actually had been there twice through the short-term program. And it just kept coming up through people that I knew that were still using. That's all the people I talked to. I'm like, maybe I need to do something. I need to change. Something needs to happen. So I called them and got in December. And I was ready. I believe that when I walked into those doors, I was completely surrendered. I don't care what rules I had to follow. I don't care what they took away from me. I didn't want to smoke cigarettes anymore. That was a big rule, of why I didn't ever think of going to Teen Challenge before. Because I'd smoked for 30 years. I don't know why that's funny, but I was completely surrendered. All I know is I didn't want to live the way that I did, but I didn't want to give up on my life either anymore. There was this hope inside of me that I wanted something different. And when I walked into those doors, the first 3 months, I was still trying to find my identity and other things. I thought that once I walked in, I was going to have this restoration with my children, who I had been gone for 4 years from. And that ended. They came to visit me in February 19th. And the visit lasted no more than 15 minutes. And it ended with them screaming at me, telling me how I abandoned them, what I did to them, everything that I deserved to hear. And I remember looking at the staff like, is this going to stop? And they were just bewildered too. And I had to sit and take it. And they left. And the next day was my birthday, and I was in chapel in the morning time. I remember thinking, what is this all for? What am I doing this for? I've ruined everything. I've been here 3 months, and no one wants to talk to me. And it was during worship that usually I'm standing, and the sister behind me said, Lorna, this is where you get up. The enemy wants you to stay down. You stand up and you start worshiping like you always do. And so I did, and that's when I seen him hold out his hands, and he said, are you going to give them to me now?
Wow.
And I said, what? And he said, your children, they're my children first. You give them to me so I can show you who you are in me. Not as mom, not as a daughter, not as an addict, not as anything, not as a student, an A student, nothing. Let me show you who you are in me. Oh, and so that day I said, I'm just going to give up any expectations of restoration of my family, and I'm just going to pursue him and do this day by day.
Wow, what a bold and courageous move. Lorna, we're going to take a little break and come back and continue to hear Lorna's story. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Real Recovery. Bill and George have Lorna as our guest tonight, and we are hearing her story, which is absolutely amazing, what God is doing, what God has done, and what God will continue to do in her life. All right, Lorna. So we get through Teen Challenge. We have a new heart, a new mind, redeemed life going forward. Tell me what life is like and how you're walking out your sobriety and your Christian faith.
Well, one thing that I learned through my healing with Jesus is that we are called to love him with all of our heart, mind, and spirit, and love our neighbor just as much. Those are the two most important commandments. And so I've been doing that. I want to spread love. I want to show love. I want people to see Jesus when they see me. I want to give him glory, to show that it's only him that can save. He did this. He gave me a new life. He gave me a new mind. The biggest thing is that he's taught me forgiveness. Forgiveness in a whole new light. Forgiveness from the people that abused me, because my duty is to love them. I don't have to, have them in my life to love them, but they're his children and he will deal with them. I'm not the judge. And so to have forgiveness breaks me free from what Satan would want me to do, and that would be to hate people. I found forgiveness in my parents. I understood that they had a lot of trauma as children, lots of violence themselves, that they did the best that they could, and that they did not want to hurt me or each other. Is just that they were entrapped with trauma. And to be able to forgive them both and understand and have empathy and sympathy has really freed me. So for me, I want to spread love. God is love. I want to spread love and really just emphasize love and forgiveness. I think with those two, there's a lot of healing that can take place with relationships, with, any situation. Love and forgiveness is huge.
What kind of guardrails do you have around your life right now in order to keep you on the middle of the highway, so to speak?
This is how blessed I am. God is so good for me. The moment that I walked into Teen Challenge, I said, I'm home. I'm home, and I don't ever want to leave here. I don't know how I'm going to stay, but I am not leaving. And I graduated in December of 24, and by the time April came around of this year, I'm employed with them.
Wow.
So I'm on the AV team. I get to worship every day. I get to be at home, which is Teen Challenge. I get to be around the sisters that were there while I was there as a client, but going forward, I just get to be around new believers who are just coming into this, and my community is all Teen Challenge, and that's where I wanted to stay, and he blessed me with that.
Very solid. The key, I think, to staying in our walk and recovering as addicts that are in recovery, walking with Jesus, is to work with other people.
Yes.
And if you're not there, it sounds ridiculous, but it's by far the best part of recovery is to see people get sober and saved, and you don't want to miss it. And you've got a front row to the action. There's nothing boring about a recovery that's working with other people.
Absolutely.
And Lorna, doesn't your heart just overflow with hope for the sisters that are coming into the program, that are broken and defeated and feeling like they have no hope? Doesn't your heart just animate for them with hope?
Absolutely.
And that was you at one point.
It sure was.
In the storage locker going, what am I doing? I have no identity. I have no future. You wanted to take your own life.
Yeah.
And now it's a complete reversal of all of that.
Yeah. And I get to help people along the way now.
Yeah.
That's why we do this, to hear these stories, God's story in you. I never get tired of it.
Oh, I don't either. And oftentimes when you hear stories, you think, okay, we're getting to the good part. And then there's a little delay in getting to the really good part.
There's more.
It was funny when I was invited here, one of the questions I said immediately was, can I speak Jesus? Because there's no way that I can tell my story without him.
Yeah, well, you are so welcome to speak Jesus all day long here. That's the whole point of this program.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, can you speak Jesus here? There's no way you would be here talking about Jesus if it wasn't for Jesus.
Absolutely.
And that's why we get to do the show, and it's a privilege. You've helped my walk.
Thank you.
We never want to take it for granted what good we have with being saved and walking with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, Lorna, what kind of encouragement would you have? I mean, I want to think back briefly of 12-year-old Lorna, who was looking to do something called smoking weed.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to 20-year-old or 23-year-old Lorna that decides to take this hit of meth. So go back to those two ages very briefly and say, if you could do it over, do you have any idea what you might have done differently?
Keep talking to somebody.
Okay, there you go.
Find someone to talk to, someone safe.
You were frozen emotionally, weren't you?
I was frozen.
Yeah. So had you been in a church environment, maybe there might have been a youth worker
Absolutely.
that you could have had a confidential conversation with.
Yeah.
And how important that is to have mentors and people that can come alongside kids today, youth today.
Life-saving.
It is, isn't it?
Life-changing.
Yeah.
To have somebody, I've seen it at churches recently, older people, mentors, reaching down to children and saying, it's so, just not being judgmental or I don't know what I'm trying to say. They're ready to help without condemning.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely 12-year-old Lorna needed that.
Yeah.
Someone to say, this is what I'm feeling and this is my lifestyle. Just have somebody listen. I would have loved to have someone listen to me and not feel judged and just be okay to just be met where I was at that time.
You just felt so isolated and alone, didn't you?
Yeah.
Like, am I this freak kid? And is there anyone else going through this? Or is it just me?
I really thought it was only me.
Of course you did. So,
and I think everybody thinks that at that time
Yeah.
or when they're going through things, and it's a deception.
Yeah.
That's what the enemy wants.
Yeah. So how do you show your vulnerability when you're 12, when their kids are going to point their fingers and maybe laugh at you?
Mm-hmm.
You're that kid. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
That would be horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, in the meantime, there's probably 15 other kids in your class going through the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're not connecting the dots.
The great thing in God's economy, if you hadn't have gone through that, you can't talk to the younger people that are 12 now. Mm-hmm. But you can now because God brought you back. You're qualified to do that. We couldn't talk to them. Some angry guy with a Bible telling me not to do drugs and get around. And I remember that. Mm-hmm. It's like you have no idea what you're talking about, but you do. And God not only saves you and does you off, but he's got a ministry for you and you're doing it. And that will keep you walking the line.
So maybe you could even encourage some youth pastors today or tonight that says, am I making a difference doing my ministry? And let them know that you are indeed making a difference.
Yes, they are making a difference. Children are so vulnerable, and I did need that adult back in the day to say, "Hey, I care about you."
Does Teen Challenge have you talking in schools yet, or is that in your future to have somebody go in and because kids can read that you know what you're talking about, and there are people in your class that need to know they're not alone and there's a way out. I know they do that.
Yeah, they haven't offered that yet.
They will.
But I really want to go back to the jails and help the broken ones there. That's where I found.
Well, God's going to use you in great ways, Lorna. Thank you so much for telling your stories. Great meeting you, having you on the show. That's all the time we have for Real Recovery tonight, George. It's been another great award-winning episode.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Have a great night and look forward to having you join us next week. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.